Okay, see how this goes. And there we are. Hmm, weird. One second. All right. Hmm. Make sure that everything else is running good. This, no. Edit string info. Join me. Story. There we go. Should be better. I'm gonna keep those two open since. Sorry about that. Since my chat doesn't load up on my OBS at the time. Now, let's get this show started. No, almost forgot to hit record. Now we got the show started. Hey there, Allah. Welcome back. Today, a new one came out, and this one is gonna be a doozy. I'm gonna go ahead and read it for you. Hmm. Let's see, what's the. think I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call it one thing, but the original title is gonna be on the bottom though. Oh, yeah. I know what to call it. My Last Live Concert. Written by Speedwagon is Afraid. Narrated by Gamma Akutabi. With guests, with a special guest, Summer Puppet. And here we go. I don't know if you know this, but if you're a student and are looking for some money, freelancing as a music journalist is a reasonably sweet deal, especially if you focus on concerts. The workload is manageable. You get to see a lot of bands you wouldn't otherwise. And even though the payment isn't too great, it's alright for what you're doing. Plus, you usually get pretty good seats for concerts. You need a bit of luck to get into it, but if you manage to do so, I can only recommend that you give it a shot. Back when I did it, I wrote for a small magazine that focused on and back when I oh shoot. Back when I did it, I wrote for a small magazine that focused on the alternative sides of music. Given my musical taste, I was mostly assigned to attend gothic and heavy metal shows, which were honestly a lot of fun. There are, of course, all the Marilyn Mansons and Metallica knockoffs, but a lot of the experimentation is going on, even though a few of them actually got anywhere. I cover everything, from cover bands to experimental stuff that never made it big. I mostly saw them when they were well known enough to be worth writing about, but still kind of underground. Some of those bands got quite far, actually. And one of the bands I wrote about you probably know if you're into metal. But that's not what I'm here to write about. Back then, back then, they were not great, let me tell you. Other bands were far more interesting. Sometimes they are experimental bands, the kind of band that defies the traditional lineup. Maybe uses three guitars or two drums. Maybe doesn't have a singer or desires to. Oh, I hate this. Sometimes they're experimental bands, the kind of band that defies the traditional lineup. Maybe uses three guitars or two drums. Maybe doesn't have a. Sometimes they're experimental bands, the kind of bands that define the traditional lineup. Maybe uses three guitars or two drums. Maybe doesn't have a singer or decides to skip the bass in favor of a taiko drum. Yes, that happened. They can be a hit or a miss, really, and most of it depends on the execution and dedication of the band in question. And then there's the really weird stuff. Bands that don't just defy tradition, but outright crush every notion you have about music. These never made it big, but they made for a good article, and you can always one up those hipsters friend of yours? Whenever someone claims to have seen something like I've never even thought about, I usually tell them about that one time I saw a band that made music using old tape recorders and rubber band. Eh, let's try that again. And then there's the really weird stuff. Bands that just don't defy tradition but outright crush every notion you have about music. This never made it big, but they make for a good article, and you can always one up those hipster friends of yours. Whenever someone claims to have seen something like I never seen or even thought about, I usually tell them about the one time I saw a band that made music using old tape recorders and rubber bands, or had lyrics written in a language that they invented themselves, and instead of CDs, sold booklets about how to learn, about how to and instead of CDs, they sold booklets about how to learn said language. I never tell them about Gompo though, and I never will. That stuff haunts me. This was shortly before I intended to quit the This was shortly before I intended to quit this job anyway, since my final exams were coming up and I wouldn't have the time or the need to work on this side. This was shortly before I intended to quit this job anyway, since my final exams were covered. Uh, this was shortly before I intended to quit this job anyway, since my final exams were coming up and I wouldn't have the time or the need for 'em. And I wouldn't have the time or the need to work on the side. But still, I had some concerts I had promised to attend, and while I knew I should start studying for my exams, a bit of fun couldn't hurt, I reasoned. I had made a bit of research in the band. I had made a bit of research in the band I will cover next. I had made a bit of research in the band I will cover next, so that I know what to expect. After all, if I expected summer music to peacefully fantasize to, After all, if I expected summer music to peacefully fantasize to, and got trash metal that inspired mosh pits, that would tarnish my reviews. Also, I have to dress the part. Ever try getting into a gothic club dressed in metal attire? You get in, but some of the looks you get could kill small animals. But I digress. The odd thing was, nothing really turned up for Gumpo. Their logo looked like the archetypical black metal shtick, barely readable, and that's the way they wanted it, obviously. They play in a small club not far from where I live that was known to host some of the more hardcore bands and regularly some of the more hardcore bands and regularly had people roughing each other up. But that was it. Not set lists, no albums, even those older. But that was it. No set lists, no albums, even those underground sites I usually use for reference when all else fails or sparse in what. no set, but that was it. No set lists, no albums, even those underground sites that I usually use for reference or all fail, were sparse with information. Well, no matter. They probably had their first real gig and knew the owner or something. All the better to milk it for a bit of extra cash if they turn out to be decent. A true diamond in the rough. So I went with my usual hardcore metal outfit and to the club. Inside the club, the usual crowd had gathered. Metalheads of every color, from the large, bulky types to the lanky and acne-ridden. Oh, goodness. Inside the club, the usual crowd had gathered. Metalheads of every color, from the large, bulky types to the lanky and acne-ridden. Long hair was prevalent, of course, as well as the smell of beer, whiskey, and questionable hygiene. Not many women in sight, and those few who were seen to have a full-on flock of bodyguards. I went and got myself a beer to hype myself up while I inspected the stage. Gumpo was set to play in about half an hour, so I had plenty of time to observe their lineup. Nothing too special though. A set of drums, the bass drum showing to the Nothing too special though. A set of drums, the bass drum showing the same indecipherable lettering that had come up during my research. Two guitar stands, one microphone, everything hooked up and ready to go. From the way the guitar stand and the microphone were arranged, I figured they had a bass guitarist. A guitarist, and a singer who focused on singing, not playing the guitar on the side. Already an important observation to make beforehand, since this will make him be able. Since this will make him be. Since this will make him able to engage more with the crowd. Always a good thing to have. I asked around, but the more I did, the more I understood. Nobody in here really knew the band. Sure, some people had done a bit of research like me, but they had found about as much or less. They were curious, however, or just didn't care about the band that was about to play. This reassured me about my theory that Gumpo probably knew the owner. This reassured me about my theory that Gumpo probably knew the owner of the bar, or someone close to them, and was using this location to test the waters. Not the worst move. If they wanted a tough crowd, they certainly find it here. This location was known to attract a certain breed of metalhead, the kind that isn't opposed to a mosh pit going a little out of hand. Lost in thought about this, I only realized that the light had dimmed as someone pushed me aside to get a better glimpse at the stage. The background music had ceased as well. All I could hear was excited muttering and scrambling. The first thing I noticed when the band entered the stage was the singer. He had to be the singer, really, because every other position would not suit him. He outshone the other band members up to the point that I cannot even remember them too vividly, as I was captured by him. The drummer, I remember, was of Indian descent, but otherwise I remember little. The singer was huge, Face to face, he would tower over me and my 6'1", but on the stage, he looked even bigger than that. He was very heavily built too, with a prominent belly and round face. His skin was almost the color of soot, and had a look about it that I can only describe as coarse. He didn't seem to sweat, his skin as dry as a dune. But the thing that really set him apart was his smile. When he got up to the microphone, he smiled at the crowd like he wanted to swallow them up, and his teeth seemed like those of a shark, fit for the job of devouring an entire crowd to fill that enormous belly. The band had already the band had already taken their positions, but the usual holler and cheers did not start. You could have heard a fly buzzing. Nobody even seemed daring to move, like the first one to capture the attention of the mighty singer will be the first one to quench his hunger. But then the music started. And man, when I meant it started, it really started. There was no warm up, no lame introduction, no 1, 2, 3, 4 accompanied by the smacking of drumsticks. They simply started their first song, and it began with a deep, guttural growl that I cannot compare to any other singer out there, for that would be unfair to them. You can train your voice all you want, but you'll never come near the sound of an earthquake. Gumpo's lead singer, however, did, and I could feel the ground rumbling under my feet as he drew out his this growl that the band carried with their instrumental into. Oh, Gumpo's lead singer, however, did, and I could feel the ground rumbling under my feet as he drew out this growl that the band carried with their instruments into a fast-paced composition that instantly turned the crowd from awestruck to whip into a frenzy, a mosh pit erupting well before the second verse. I never wrote that article about Gumpo, but if I had, it would have read something like this. Even after only 2 songs, Gumpo already had the audience where other bands take a whole evenings to get them. They were going wild, dripping with sweat and shoving each other around whatever room they were in. Nobody was staying still. Everything moved to the rhythm. Gumpo was pure, exemplified brutality. And I say this with the utmost respect. Few people can convey emotion through music, but Gumpo could. And what they conveyed was dominant, absolute rage. When the second song faded out, the crowd was exhausted. They had gone at it like I had only seen a few times before or since, shoving, punching, and kicking like they were on a battlefield. Someone had a bloody nose, but no one paid attention to it, not even the guy himself. The song faded out with a last cymbal crash, and the crowd exploded in cheers and shouting. Just then, the singer raised his hand. His voice was deep. Oh, let me get that right. SummerSlam. His voice was deep, slow, but I think everyone in the room could hear him as clearly as if he were standing right beside them. Again, the crowd was almost totally silent. This was the usual black metal stuff I used to This was the usual black metal stuff I was used to hearing by now. We are the messiah of metal. Blah, blah, blah. It works if you're really into the band, but otherwise, well, a few months later, it always just sounds pathetic, even if you were really into it. A show act, nothing more. But the day Dukkha said it sounds real to me. No, not the day. Oh my goodness. Ah. Ah. But the way Dukkha said it sounds real to me. He didn't say it for the show, nor did he want to make himself understood. He just said what was important to the band, as matter of factly, as if he was reading the right. As matter of factly, as if, as matter of factly, as if he was reading the wiring for their setup. SummerSlam. Kick-ass title, I thought. But I did not laugh. Nobody did. Nobody even rolled their eyes. They looked at Dukkha like he was a demagogue, speaking on behalf of something they will never understand, but that he could make them serve. Well, I had been right about one thing. Absolved by Violence was a kick-ass title. It was lower than the two that came before it, but the raw energy it exuded filled the air like pheromones. The mosh pit became almost frantic, and now there wasn't just one guy with a bloody nose, but several. People stopped helping each other up. They didn't just use their shoulders anymore, but their foreheads, hands, and elbows. I managed to dodge a particular large guy who tried to shove me into the crush barrier, which could have easily gone wrong. Just when I got my balance back, I found myself opposite a wall made of humans, interlocked and ready to go. I took a step back and bumped into another wall. Two walls of people, slowly withdrawn from one another, leaving me stranded in between them like Moses when he parted the Red Sea. I knew a wall of death when I saw one, and as absolution, and as absolved by violence grew slower and slower still, so too the withdrawal of those two people. I felt naked, exposed, like a tree just before a lightning bolt hits it. The sudden crash of the drums and the wailing of the guitar hit me just seconds before the walls did. I was crushed like an insect between two avalanches of skin, muscle, and anger. People descended on one another like barbarians, sheer anger in their eyes. All the while, Compa was still playing, louder and angrier than ever. Someone next to me fell and disappeared under a plethora of boots. I don't know what happened to them, and I pray to God they're alive. But I don't know what happened to them, and I pray to God they're alive. But I honestly don't think so. Somewhere, a guy screaming what was obviously excruciating pain, but he was quickly drowned out by the music. His cry silenced under another verse. I don't know what made me, of all people, keep a sober mind, but I somehow managed to get through the horde of people lashing at each other like mad and out of the club. I never went back there. From what I know, the club closed shortly after, and I will never mention its name again. Gumpo had disappeared from the scene too. From all I know, if they even existed in the first place. Maybe this was all just a bad dream, accumulated from exam induced stress. But I can still feel where those masses ran into me. Even though it has been years. And that's today's story, Outlaw. I hope that you like it. This has been a story that I've been wanting to do for years. I actually been having it on back burner for years. I heard it from an author before. I think it was NC Mc, NC McChrista or something like that. One of those guys. I mostly enjoyed the story itself. And I was lucky enough to get a hold of the author, and he gave me his blessings. And if you think of me making money off this, no, I've been going on the red much more for this. I try everything. I try, okay, let me pick up some instruments and learn them and make some music. No, that didn't work. On red, I wanted to increase the quality of the audio, especially for this because I've been really wanted to do this one and just make it right. I got a hold of a friend of mine whose voice is just amazing. Every time I hear it, it's just amazing. He's got a deep voice and it really suits Duka. And I was like, you know what? Hey, do you want to be Duka? He's like, hell yeah. I'm happy that he did. And I used whatever was in my arsenal to get the music going. Music that you're going to be hearing on the background. And I hope that you like that one. If you want to hear more of that song or the single of it, just let me know and I could upload it at a later time for y'all to hear. Um, well, after finally taking years to do it, I finally went ahead and did it. Thank you, Speedwagon is Afraid, for letting me narrate this story. And that's it, Outlaw. And like always, I see y'all on the wasteland. Oh, hello, Duchess. Sorry, I was in the zone and I wasn't really paying attention to the chat. I hope you've been well. Let me go ahead and type that in there. Right, so that's that. Cool. 30 minutes for what seemed like. Oh, let me stop that. I don't want it to keep recording and then having to delete all that. Rename that. My concert. Ten four. Gotta put those dates. You don't put those dates. things could get easily lost. Save. Save all. Yay. Thank you for stopping by, Duchess. And that's pretty much it. Just wanted to get this out, this story out. There's some other stuff that I really want to narrate, and it sucks that some of the authors on Reddit are gone, are either gone, banned, suspended, or they just took their stuff out and left. And that's not really that's not really cool, especially because it used to be a gold mine in there. You could just go there and anything could have been a pot of gold. And before this thing became a whole, hey, the rules, follow the rules, which everything is like rules this, rules that. If the rule stories, they kind of feel like spoilers. You don't want to spoil a story and tell them like something bad is gonna happen. You want that bad thing to happen unexpectedly, or build up the dread to it, not say, hey, if you don't follow this rule, the cuckoo is gonna come get you. That's something that you tell a kid. So that way they're terrified and they don't do that shit. You don't want to do that with a reader. Give them more credit. They're adults and they want to get scared. Let them get scared. Oh well, that's enough of my venting and rant. Thank you all for stopping by on the impromptu live stream. That'll be it. Y'all take care. Deuces.